Thanks for taking a few minutes to get up to speed with the results of our Pod D and QuickTrack improvement work that we've been working on over this last month. We'll briefly review the process changes that we implemented, the metrics we use to evaluate success, what's going to continue, and what additional work will be completed in the next few months. So as a reminder, here are the changes we implemented that started on Wednesday, August 1st. The first change was that patients were directed down 2 pathways of care based on their ESI categorization and updated split flow criteria. So patients were designated as D or AC&E, and we eliminated the use of a QuickTrack designation. The second change was that all providers conducted their intake process through the TR1, 2, or 3 intake rooms. And the final larger change was an update to the split flow triage criteria. So why did we do this work? This work was completed to address the 5 issues that are listed on this slide. So take a second to refresh your memory on the 5 whys we used for this project. So here are our results. Overall, median length of stay showed an improvement of 8 minutes during the testing period compared to the period of January through July of 2018, which is a great improvement. Underneath that, the ESI 3 patients were really the primary driver of that length of stay improvement, as their length of stay improvement was a full 18 minutes better than their median length of stay, January to July. And we also saw no change in the ESI 4 and 5 total length of stay, which was important because as we blended the populations and knew that the volume of ESI 3 patients is relatively high, we wanted to make sure that those patients weren't, the ESI 4 and 5 patients didn't end up waiting even longer for their care. We saw about 1 more patient on average per day. We saw about the same number of patients per hour. There were more patients that were assigned to AC&E on average per day compared to January to July. Now that number might be a little bit concerning, but it also might be a little misleading because we did change the criteria slightly for assigning patients to Pod D or AC&E, and we also really focused a lot of attention on making sure that we followed the grid. So there may have been patients in the January through July time period that were being designated as Pod D that actually should have been AC&E. One other measure that we evaluated during the testing period were the number of patients that post-intake were reassigned to an AC or E bed. So for that measure, 14 patients were documented as going through an intake process and then being moved into an AC, or 14 patients were then determined to be AC or E appropriate. 2 of those patients remained in Pod D and were treated by the provider. The other 12 were actually moved out of the space. So it's really important to think about the fact that this really happens, this redesignation, in at least the recorded numbers, less than 1 every 2 days, which I believe is a win compared to where we may have been in January through July. So what's going to continue going forward? Intakes will continue to run out of the TR1 through TR3 space. We have some future testing that I'll talk about in a minute that will influence whether we spend time and effort in moving or testing the use of intakes out of the D1 through D3 rooms, which is a lot of feedback that we received over this testing period. The other piece that will remain the same is that triage nurses will continue to assign patients to Pod D or AC&E, so we will continue to have no QuickTrack designation. Thanks to everyone for providing feedback around the equipment and supplies. The master issues log still has a few outstanding items, so you'll see that those hopefully will be taken care of in the next 2 weeks. We're also going to be reevaluating and solidifying the equipment and supplies that are used in the intake rooms, primarily in TR2 since that room is set up a little bit different than the other two intake rooms. So what are we going to be testing into the future? There were a lot of feedback about opportunities to improve the utility of our paramedic team that right now are working in that intake role within the room. So starting September 19th, which is a Wednesday, we're going to be testing some changes to the way that the intake medic group is going to be used, and the primary goals of that work is to determine whether we can improve patient throughput if we don't station medics in the room but assign them to specific tasks that may be outside of the room. And then also, does satisfaction with our paramedic teams, does paramedic satisfaction improve as we evaluate these additional changes? So there'll be more information that'll be sent out as we get closer to implementing the testing period, so stay tuned. I did include in the last two slides here some of the information that's been sent out via email previously, but might be helpful for you to take a peek at as you're getting ready for your next shift. These are specific to Pod D, and again, a little more operational detail about how we're expecting all disciplines to be doing specific tasks in that space. So the first three on this slide, I'm not going to go through. Again, this information is in your email, so you can refer to that or refer to the slides if you feel at a future time. Just press pause and you can read through them. Same for this page. I'm not going to spend time reading through them, but again, it's an available resource for you to look at. So thanks to everyone for their awesome feedback and engagement during this testing period. Thanks to the advisory team that really spent a lot of time and effort being the point of contact for people within their discipline and providing feedback to the group, and also helping with questions of design and process. And as we go through this next testing period, if you do have any questions or suggestions, please reach out to those individuals because they will be the primary conduit to bring that information back to the ED Flow steering team. So thanks for your attention, and as always, if you have any questions, feel free to let me know. Thanks.